this morning, can I just check sound quality? Can everyone hear me adequately? If you could just raise your hands to confirm that you can hear me. That's fine. I think that's an affirmative from everyone. Thank you. I think it would be helpful just to, again, for just checking the sound quality, if we could just introduce ourselves first of all, and then we can go into the usual. I see that Lynn Sweeney may have just joined us there, which is good. We'll proceed in any event. If we could start then just with those that are going to speak today, from the applicant, please. Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, ma'am. I'm Marcus Trinnick.
Well, no, I've had the in-laws up here all week because they're getting the kitchen done. So,
right. Marcus Trinnick here for the applicant, and I see that Fraser Gillis and also Lynn's on the call. Lynn, I think you may be asked just to unvideo yourself. There we go.
That's fine. Thank you very much for that. If I could ask people that are not speaking to mute their microphones, because it does help with the sound quality, and just unmute yourself when you wish to speak. That's fine. And from the council, please, can I have introductions from those that are going to speak, please?
Good morning, ma'am. This is Maurice O'Carroll, advocate. I'm here with Arlene Knox and also we have Susan Mayer. I think it might be possible that Arlene or Susan might wish to chime in, but I think by and large it'll only be me you're hearing from. But I'd like them to be present and able to chime in if necessary.
That's absolutely fine. Thank you very much. And from Nature Scotland, I believe I have to keep reminding myself I have to change the name from Scottish Natural Heritage.
Yes, I think we're referring to it as Nature Scots going forward. So it's Jennifer Jack from Harper MacLeod representing Nature Scot, and I have Stephen Austin from Nature Scot in attendance. And as with Mr. O'Carroll, it may be that Mr. Austin will chime in, but primarily I'll be doing the speaking today.
Thank you very much for that, and I will make a mental note that it's Nature Scot. That's fine. I have to remind myself of that. Thank you very much. Now, as we go through the agenda, I will invite relevant parties to comment. But if you do wish to interject at any time, please just show your hand, and I'll try to keep track of who wishes to speak. So thank you for that. Now that we've established communications in our virtual world this morning, and by way of a brief introduction, this is the second pre-examination meeting in advance of the scheduled inquiry under Section 36 of the Electricity Act on the proposed Blarghour wind farm proposal near Inverary in Argyll. My name is Alison Cord, and I am the reporter appointed by Scottish ministers to consider this case and report to them with my conclusions and recommendations. Now, you may recall that we first met back in Inverary in February, and I'm sure you'll all agree that seems like a very long time ago now. The public inquiry that we're here to discuss today is scheduled to commence on the 12th of October. And as you will be aware, after some deliberations over the summer, we concluded that we would hold that inquiry in Glasgow, quite unusually departing from our usual more local venue, given the current circumstances with COVID-19. And we were intending to proceed on the basis of holding a physical inquiry at the Doubletree Hilton in Glasgow. Now, in the interest of transparency, this meeting is being recorded today and will be uploaded on the case file. I would also intend to produce a short note of this meeting. The purpose of today's meeting is to address any remaining procedural issues prior to the inquiry commencing. As usual at these type of meetings, there will be no discussion of the case. First and foremost today, I would like to establish a view from participating parties as to how we should proceed with regards to the intention to hold a conventional style of inquiry in Glasgow. And depending on any decision made in that respect, there will be a number of housekeeping and procedural matters that we also need to discuss. Now, before we get into that main matter and the other matters on the agenda, is there anything else initially that anyone wishes to bring to my attention this morning? Mr. Trinick, anything from you?
No, thank you.
Mr. O'Carroll, anything?
No, nothing, thank you.
Jack?
No, nothing from me, thank you.
Ms. Knox, anything from you? And Mr. Austin, anything?
No, thank you. No.
That's great. We'll then just proceed with the matters on the agenda. So leading on to item 2, just want to give a little bit of context to the sort of main issue that I wish to discuss today. Following the reschedule of the original inquiry arrangements, I think we all hoped that there was a reasonable prospect of proceeding with business as usual by the autumn. Indeed, our first post-lockdown in-person inquiry has just been completed in Aviemore, and that seemed to go well with all the relevant safety precautions in place. Clearly, we had hoped to proceed with this inquiry in a similar fashion. However, I think we would all be aware and all appreciate that the risk environment with regard to COVID-19 is changing and is deteriorating. And that has led the DPA to reevaluate whether it is sensible to proceed with physical inquiries at this time. Now, as a result, we have revisited our guidance on this really just over the last few days. And this bears in mind the considerable experience gained over the summer in running virtual pre-examination meetings and hearings, including the recent Red John inquiry, which you may be aware was carried out virtually, albeit through a process of hearing sessions. So really the upshot of all this is that given the currently deteriorating situation, our default position at the DPA will be that hearings and inquiries should be undertaken virtually. Now, I think we all appreciate some of the difficulties involved in that, but we have produced guidance to that effect, and I understand that's been published on our website this morning, and would be available for you to read online. And it basically just confirms what I've just said, is that in light of the deteriorating situation, the default position will be to have a virtual process. So clearly, on the agenda today, there's a number of detailed matters that we need to discuss. But if I could firstly just canvass an initial view on the prospect of proceeding virtually, or not you consider we would be in a position to do so to commence as programmed for the week beginning the 12th of October. Now, I'm not sure if you've had the chance to discuss this amongst yourselves or how much consideration you've managed to give to this. But if I could just start with an initial view from the applicant, please.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. I haven't seen the new guidance. So when you say a default position, I'm not sure if that means that's the position or whether it's a default position, but we can still hold physical inquiries.
I think it's a very strong steer that we should avoid having physical inquiries in the current risk environment.
Okay, I was in the 3-week Murray inquiry, which ended last week, and which was run very well indeed, I may say. We socially distanced perfectly well in a very large room, a maximum of 3 people per party in a room. It was a very, very large room, it has to be said, but 3 people in the room. And I wasn't aware of any problems COVID-wise arising during the inquiry, and we got through it. So although the risk environment may have changed, our ability to manage that risk environment, I don't think has changed. And our very strong preference, while the law allows, is to maintain a physical inquiry. The reasons for that are, at least from my perspective, as follows. I have done video evidence. I think it may work in a hearing context. I don't think it will work in a public, in an inquiry session context for cross-examination, where I guess seeing and hearing each other physically becomes more important. Secondly, there are broadband issues. They're going to arise. They did arise during the Murray inquiry once or twice. The webcast dropped out, in which case we had to stop because there was a legitimate expectation on the part of the public that they could take part in the process by listening, because they were given an opportunity to make written representations after the evidence, so they had to see it. Also, we did have someone giving video evidence who in the end had to drive all the way in because the bandwidth wasn't good enough. So there are broadband issues, and perhaps I'm much less of a fan of virtual inquiries than I was before the Murray experience. I think although there may be a strong preference for a virtual inquiry, I push back at the moment and say, while we're in what used to be called phase 3 of the recovery, and I think we still are, as far as the Scottish Government's concerned, then we should hold to a physical inquiry. It can be done, it has been done, and I think we should do it. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Mr. Trinick, for making your position clear. There's a few matters I'd like to come back and discuss, but I think just initially, if we can hear a view from the other parties, please, starting with the Council's view on this.
Thank you, Ma'am. I have to say that my position almost entirely mirrors what Mr. Trinick has just said. My very, very strong preference is that we should have a physical inquiry. I don't benefit from the experience that Mr. Trinick has just had in Murray over 3 weeks, but I take on board everything he says, and I've no reason to disagree with that. And the main points I took from that was that the in-person inquiry in Murray worked very well, and as Mr. Trinick has said, whilst circumstances have deteriorated elsewhere, it's still possible to take the necessary precautions within the inquiry. I also agree with what's said that in terms of carrying out inquiry sessions, certainly is something that would be, I think, inordinately difficult, or very, very difficult indeed, to be done virtually, and that in-person inquiry sessions are, in my opinion, very much by far the leading best option by quite some way from the second best option, which is to do so virtually. I think if I were pushed, I would say that initially then that the inquiry and hearing sessions should be in person, if that is still permitted as a matter of law, in bearing in mind the measures taken by the government. But if pushed, and if there were to be some form of hybrid adopted, I would say that the inquiry sessions should always be held in person, but that possibly the hearing sessions, because they are structured and under your control, ma'am, might possibly, as a second best alternative, be adequately dealt with by means of virtual hearing by WebEx or other similar platform, or indeed could, in the council submission, could be converted to written submissions. But primarily my position remains to be that of that currently expressed by Mr. Trinick. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very, very much. I've recorded that view. Could I then hear from Nature Scott, please, on that matter?
Yes, I think the position of Nature Scott is slightly different to that expressed by Mr. Trinick and Mr. O'Carroll, in that whilst they can very much appreciate that a landscape and visual inquiry session may well be very difficult to conduct virtually, given the nature of the large scale visualizations and drawings, etc., that require to be looked at during the course of such a session. They consider that the same issue doesn't arise to the same extent in relation to the PEAT session, and so it may be more manageable to deal with the PEAT session as a virtual session than perhaps the landscape and visual session. In relation to the broadband issues, etc., that Mr. Trinick has referred to, Nature Scott do appreciate that those sorts of issues may well arise. It has to be said that there has been a big improvement in such matters from the beginning of lockdown to where we are now. In the experience of the Nature Scott team, we've conducted a large number of virtual meetings in preparation for this inquiry, and haven't had any great difficulty in terms of broadband speed or broadband dropping. And people are now better set up, certainly within our team, in terms of having better access to more screens, etc., with a view to being able to manage to see both people as we are in this hearing this morning, and also having documents on screen, etc. So from that practical perspective, the Nature Scott team would be content that they are relatively well set up to deal with a virtual hearing. It's fully appreciated what Mr. Trinick says in relation to it being better to be able to see people in person, but Nature Scott is also very aware of the deteriorating health situation and increasing risk levels. And in terms of responsibilities as employers, Nature Scott is certainly also very aware of the level of risk that they would be asking employees to expose themselves to in travelling a significant distance to Glasgow, staying in a hotel and being in a room with other people, albeit on a socially distanced basis, over the course of a number of days. I think that the view also of Nature Scott is that in light of the rules that have been circulated already for the conduct of the inquiry, that there seems to be a diminishing level of benefit to being in person, given that it will not be permissible to pass notes amongst team members, etc., and we would be relying upon electronic communications between team members throughout the course of the inquiry, whilst cross-examination, etc., is going on in any event. And whilst all of those things, I think, whether we're in person or whether we're conducting matters remotely, are no doubt going to be very difficult to manage, and it's difficult to have an eye on multiple screens and on your phone for WhatsApp messages coming through from your team, or however the electronic means might be of having maintaining communications amongst team members. That will be challenging, but I suppose it may be that whether we're in the room or whether we're in our own rooms conducting matters, that might be something we just need to deal with in any event.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a few things I wanted to say on the back of that, but if you want to come in, Mr. Trinick, first of all.
No, ma'am, you go first, and I'll respond after you've said something.
Yes, certainly. I think we would all absolutely agree that the ideal scenario here is to meet in a room and for it all to be business as usual. And I have observed the proceedings at Blarghour, and I know that the utmost provision was made to ensure the safety of participants at that inquiry, and it was our intention to proceed along that same route, given, and that's why we went to look for a major venue in Glasgow where we could have the space to allow for physical distance, etc. However, having also observed the video footage of Blarghour, it appeared to me, in accordance with what Ms. Jack was saying, was that everyone has to sit 2 metres apart. They have to communicate electronically. Because of that physical distancing, certainly watching the web footage of it, it didn't look that much different from how a virtual inquiry would appear. And the benefits, certainly you could see the people in person, but I'm struggling to see perhaps what the other benefits would be, such to warrant what is I think we would have to all accept some risk. And Glasgow is, I think, has been identified as an area where there is a bit more prevalence of the COVID virus. I have to say that the Glasgow inquiry went ahead on the margins of what we thought we were. We thought long and hard about whether we should proceed, and there was some concern at higher levels in the Scottish Government about proceeding with that. So, I think we are in quite a marginal situation here. We're on the cusp. My fear is that we, 2 weeks down the road, we might be, I hope not, but we might be in a worse position, and then we're suddenly left scrambling around trying to facilitate a virtual inquiry. So really just, again, to, I suppose, look to you to see if you think that could be accommodated, and really to understand perhaps that balance of risk against the benefits of an inquiry a bit more, I think, before we come to any final decision on this. Mr. Trinick.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Quite a few responses on that, because I think, first of all, it would be a shame to react by simply saying we can't have a physical inquiry only 1 week, when the risk profile has not really changed that much after a very successful physical inquiry, which worked very well indeed. I think, so far as Jennifer's points about landscape and visual and CO2, carbon soils evidence are concerned, actually it's the other way around, I think, in this inquiry. For a start, if you're sitting at home doing a virtual inquiry, you're going to have hard copy documents. So, and everyone involved should have hard copy documents. That's the way we did it in the physical inquiry in Murray, where the need arose, i.e. where you were looking at visualizations. So far as ordinary documents were concerned, we did have a program officer there who brought them up on screen very efficiently indeed. As you will have seen looking at the webcasts, it was, if not instantaneous, very quick, so it can be done. But where the carbon soils evidence is concerned here, it's going to be very document heavy, and I know already, having done some preparation, we'll be flipping to and from documents quite quickly, and a multitude of them. And I think actually that will make it more difficult than landscape and visual in this case. The question of travel risk, I appreciate that. I mean, I've probably got further travel than most of you, but you're in a car, you go from A to B, we're traveling all the time. Once you get into the hotel, we can go into our own lockdown, where those of us who stay in the hotel will be there all the time and just walk into the inquiry room. It's a fairly isolated environment. So far as sitting distanced in an inquiry is concerned, not being able to pass notes, we got around that very successfully in Murray through the WhatsApp system. We had a team WhatsApp, which told me very, very quickly what team members wanted me to do or not to do, and what they would like me to ask or not to ask, and all that sort of thing. That worked very well indeed. And I think ultimately, my point may be that of Mr. O'Carroll. I think that when you're conducting a cross-examination, when you're listening to a witness in person in an inquiry session, it is very different from a hearing session. The body language of the witness is important to the advocate and vice versa, and to the reporter. I think I wouldn't want that to be underestimated, that it's a very intense experience, cross-examination. It's there for a purpose as well. Whatever people may say about lawyers dominating inquiries, the purpose of an inquiry session is to dig out the truth in circumstances where it might not otherwise come out. That's why we have them. And that's why being in the same room is so important. And as a matter of fairness to the applicant and to other parties, it's important that we maintain that. And we mustn't lose sight of that. That's the ultimate reason I want a physical inquiry. We could deal, adopting Mr. O'Carroll's idea, we could deal with other matters virtually, the condition session, but actually since we're there, it wouldn't make much difference. But if that's an option you want to pursue, that's fine. And we could deal with policy virtually. But for landscape and visual and for the carbon soils issue, I really must say very strongly that we want a physical inquiry. And at the moment, things may change, but at the moment, I think we ought to maintain that while preparing in the background for a virtual inquiry, should the need absolutely arise. Or indeed, I raise the question, a postponement of the event completely until we can meet again physically. That is an option.
Okay, that just leads me into this, just to establish clearly your position. And we're not going to be able to, from the sound of it, make a decision on this today. I'm going to have to take this back to my management, given that we have issued this guidance to seek a view on how we should proceed. But just to be crystal clear about position of parties, if in the scenario whereby we were to come to a conclusion that we could not proceed at the moment with a physical inquiry, but that we would like to facilitate a virtual inquiry, what would be your response to that? Would you be in a position to wish to continue with that, or to desist it, or it's just to get absolute clarity about what the options are here from the parties?
Well, I need to take instructions on our position because I wasn't aware that guidance was coming out this morning. And we want to look at that guidance carefully. So I would need to go back and take instructions. I can't give you a view on that. But you may have noted what I said just now about there being two options. That's all I can say at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that. I mean, the guidance really doesn't say much more than the wording I used there, but I appreciate that you wish to discuss that further with your clients, given that guidance is only going out today. Anything else that other parties wish to raise on those specific matters, or to add to that?
Just one matter. Again, though, Ma'am, I find myself in complete agreement with Mr. Trinick, albeit I won't be having any involvement in the peat sessions. But just one other point I had meant to state before, and I'd like to state now, is of course that we should bear in mind that the length of the inquiry is 1/3 of that of Blarghour, so that commensurately the risks to people being involved in them are thereby also reduced. I think that's a matter that should be borne in mind as well. The length is considerably shorter. And also I would align myself with the comments about the difference, albeit that notes would be passed by means of WhatsApp messages, whether in person or virtually. That's not to say that the virtual experience would be almost the same as the in-person experience, as has been very clearly expressed by Mr. Trinick, and I'd align myself with that observation.
Okay, thank you. I think you've all been quite clear about your position there, and I think we're not going to get any clarity in terms of a decision. I would just like to leave a few points to consider. With this issue about the risks if we proceed to assume that there'd be a physical inquiry if things deteriorate further, that we wouldn't be able to do that, and then we might not be organised to do so. Perhaps that indicates that regardless of the decision we make on the back of today, we should be twin tracking our arrangements towards the inquiry so that we could switch accordingly and think about that. There's also there's the fundamental issue about whether, whilst we all appreciate the benefits of gathering together and having an official physical inquiry, there is still that issue about whether the risks in this particular instance warrant the benefits. It does appear to me that this inquiry is fairly contained in its scope, There isn't a public presence at this inquiry, although clearly it is a public inquiry, and that's a very important issue, and we'd have to look at how we facilitate that. This is very different from Blarghour, and that it is a more contained scope of evidence. And my personal view is that we could. It's not ideal. I would much rather do an inquiry. It would be much easier for me to do it in a room in Glasgow. That would be, everyone's preference. But just to impress on people that, we are in this different scenario, and whether or not we should be looking more seriously at switching to a virtual process here. And so I don't think we're going to get from the very strong message I'm getting from parties today, we're not going to get resolution to that today. So I think we could proceed with the rest of the agenda on the basis that we've got a weather eye on both processes, either the physical inquiry or the virtual inquiry. And if we can think about the remaining procedures and arrangements, tracking those both, I think that would be the optimal outcome from today's meeting, if we can at least get those processes agreed. Is everyone content then to proceed on that basis? The applicant, I see nodding, Mr. Trinick.
Yes, happy, thanks.
Thank you. Nature Scott.
Happy with that.
And the council.
Yes, thank you.
That's great, thank you. Now, shortly before this meeting, I did circulate draft rules, which these would clearly apply if we were to proceed along the hotel venue physical inquiry route. These basically reflect the rules that were in operation at the Blarghour inquiry. So I think at least Mr. Trinick will be familiar with those. Were there any issues arising from those that anyone wishes to raise, or any remaining concerns about the safety issues that would pertain to having the inquiry at the Glasgow venue? If I can invite the council first of all on that matter.
Yes, the only observation I had was that the timetable, it's a very cautiously set out timetable, and quite correctly so. I wonder if it might even be possible to shorten matters even further, because on his programme at the moment, that would start on with Mr. Bainsfair's evidence on Wednesday morning, and then we'd be concluding Carol Anderson's evidence on Thursday morning. Now, given that the recognitions will be very short, and even if they're read out, it means that there will be no examination in chief, or very little. I think it is quite possible that perhaps even with sitting late, we could get all matters finished for landscape evidence on the Wednesday, which would therefore have a knock-on effect of meaning the inquiry could perhaps be finished on the Thursday. But that's just it simply chimes in with what I said earlier on about the restricted nature of the amount of time taken for this. So I just wanted to make an observation. It's we could be more optimistic about the time that will be taken.
Okay, thank you. I would make the point, and I do agree with you. When I was doing the timetable, I did think that it was possible the landscape evidence, which seems quite contained in scope, could be considered in a shorter time frame. My only reservation would be if we're doing it as a virtual process. You do get a bit of virtual fatigue, and I think we might have to give a bit more space then if that was the case.
Yes.
Inquiry rules, did you have anything that you wanted to, did they all seem sensible to you or anything?
Yes, read through the rules of conduct that were circulated along with the draft timetable. I've read through those, and they seem eminently sensible, and I'm sure that would keep everybody straight.
Okay, thanks for that. And Nature Scott, on those matters. I want to go into each inquiry topic just briefly, individually, but just any general comments on the draft rules first of all.
On the draft rules, again, Nature Scott agrees that they're sensible. The only thing perhaps to flag, and it has already been flagged through the DPEA, is that there are certain members of the Nature Scott team who have, throughout lockdown, been shielding and have shielding responsibilities. And if matters deteriorate further, then that would continue to be a concern for the Nature Scott team in terms of attending for an in-person event as opposed to having a virtual session. But as matters stand, I gather current Scottish Government guidance is that people don't require to take additional shielding measures at the moment. But if that changes, that might become a factor to be taken into consideration further.
And are these parties, are they willing to attend a physical inquiry at the moment?
As matters stand, yes, if that is the decision.
Thank you for clarifying that. And Mr. Trinnick?
Thank you, ma'am. The timetable looks, I think I agree with Mr. O'Carroll. I think we need to allow 2 days for the carbon soils evidence, although it may go short. If it does go short, we could always take in conditions so as not to waste time. And maybe if you put that on the agenda as a means of filling time on the second day, we'll make sure we were prepared for that. On the Wednesday, yeah, I think I agree. We could go a bit short. We not necessarily take a whole day here. And therefore, you might want to put as an alternative on Wednesday afternoon to get on to policy hearing, to make sure that we make maximum use of time and don't spend longer in the venue than we need to do so for obvious reasons.
Okay, thank you for that. And you did, I think, accept that the policy hearing and condition hearing could potentially be held virtually, although there is an argument if we're all there anyway, we should just proceed.
I suspect the second argument would prevail naturally, but yes, we could deal with them virtually. And the only point of making rules is when it comes to carbon soils evidence, I've got 2 witnesses whose evidence interlocks, and I would want them both in the room with me at the same time.
Okay, so that would increase the participants in your team to include the 2 witnesses at that time.
Yeah. Otherwise, the rules are as they were for Blarghour and Rothes 3, and they work very well.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now, just I think to go just very briefly through the various elements of the evidence, just to confirm where we're at with these. First of all, turning to the Peat inquiry session, which would be our party's happy that would be the first session. I think that given the availability of the council's witnesses, that made sense to have that as the first session anyway.
Yes, it absolutely did. And also, as an adjunct to that, reduce the amount of time that the council witnesses are required to be through in Glasgow if there is to be an in-person hearing. So very much their preference.
Yes, no, that was my understanding. Thank you. And we have 3 witnesses for the Peat session, Dr. Mills, Dr. Massey and Dr. Cooper. And just looking at the inquiry timetable, we think the 2 days then, the Monday, Tuesday, would be sufficient for that evidence to conclude.
I do.
That's fine. Thank you. Mr. Scott?
Yes, I certainly don't see a difficulty in concluding within 2 days. And I think Mr. Trinnick's suggestion of perhaps having on standby the conditions session for the Tuesday afternoon would be a good idea, because if we finish earlier than anticipated, that would mean that there wouldn't be any loss of time.
And that would also mean that the Nature Scott parties wouldn't have to be present for any longer than necessary.
Indeed, because as matters, if we were to run on this timetable, then the Nature Scot witnesses or witness would require to be in attendance in Glasgow on Monday and Tuesday and then return on Friday. Again, if there was a possibility of the timetable running in the way that it's been set out in the draft, again, it would be the preference of Nature Scot not to have the witness have to return to Glasgow on the Friday and to conduct that session on a virtual basis.
Okay, so having it on the Tuesday or having it virtually would be your preferred option on the condition session.
Yes.
Is everyone happy to explore that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The council?
Agreed.
Fine, thank you very much. Okay, and then the only outstanding matter regarding peat then was the possibility of a site visit, which we talked about previously. And I think the view, my memory serves me correctly, was that it was preferable for me to carry out an accompanied site visit with the peat experts after having heard the evidence at the inquiry. And so that would, I don't think there's an opportunity to fit it into that week, but I think we should try to programme that in very quickly after the inquiry, just in case things should change and make travel more difficult. So perhaps you could consult diaries to see when might be a suitable time for that to occur after the inquiry week. There may be a potential difficulty with access to the site if we need a four-wheel drive vehicle. Clearly, in the current circumstances, I wouldn't be able to share a vehicle as I would normally do with parties. So if you could just perhaps have a think about the logistics of that and get back to me with any suggestions you might have as to how we could facilitate that accompanied visit, that would be much appreciated.
That's probably down to us, ma'am, and we'll do that.
Thank you very much. I'll take that action. Thank you. Okay, so that would then conclude the peat session. We have, as I understand it, we have the draft statement of agreed matters that just is remaining to be signed. We have the inquiry reports of all those parties. All that remains, and the core documents, all that remains are the recognitions, which are from my timetable due in tomorrow. So everything seems to be in place for those for that inquiry session. Anything else on that inquiry session before we leave that matter? Nature Scot?
No, nothing from us.
The applicant?
Nothing.
That's great. Moving on then to the landscape and visual, we've talked about the possibility of containing that more within the timetable, and that may be achievable. I've done my unaccompanied site visits prior to the inquiry, so that has been done. The only remaining information is for the agreed statement of the signed statement of agreed matters, and for the inquiry recognitions, again with the deadline of tomorrow to be submitted. Is there anything else on that matter?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
That's fine, thank you. And then the policy hearing, we have the policy statements. The next step would be for me to produce an agenda for the policy hearing, and I will endeavour to do that next week, hopefully to get that out by the end of next week, if I can achieve that. Anything on the policy hearing that anyone wanted to bring to my attention? Mr. Trinick.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. If it would be possible, if you wouldn't mind, producing the agenda on the basis that people can comment upon it, that would be helpful, because that has the advantage that if people want to raise other issues, everyone else is notified in advance because it's on the agenda.
Yes, I mean, it will be out in time for if people have matters that they wish to raise on the agenda, then you can get back to me on that. Obviously, I need to consider what I need to know in terms of my understanding of the policy situation. But certainly, yes, that there'll be ample opportunity or time for you to make comment on that. Mr. Kyle.
Just a short observation, Mum, is that the way in which the policy hearing is conducted is a structured discussion which is conducted by you in accordance with what you require in order to assist you with your task of producing a report. So the agenda that you're setting around is giving advance notice of what it is that you require. It's not in the nature of a committee meeting. So I would suspect that really there'd be very limited scope, and I'd hope there'd be very limited scope for anything else to be added to it.
Thank you for that observation. Yes, the agenda will be issued by me, and it will set out the matters that I want to hear information on. However, it's not a completely closed agenda, in that if there was a matter that I felt could be or should be addressed, then I wouldn't be closed to hearing views and considering views on that. So yes, it will be my agenda, but if parties have a burning issue that they think I've missed, then clearly I would consider adding that or looking to address that. Okay, anything else on the policy hearing then at all? No, that's good, thank you. Moving on then to conditions now. As usual, the conditions are a little bit of a movable feast, but we do seem to have made quite good progress towards agreement on conditions and highlighting those areas, remaining areas in dispute. And I would use that as the basis for issuing my agenda on the conditions, on the basis that negotiations can still continue in the background if there are opportunities to resolve remaining matters. Is there anything on the conditions session that you wish to bring to my attention? No. Okay. And all three parties are involved in the discussion on the conditions moving forward.
I believe so, but we've certainly engaged with the council, but I don't know if Jennifer, Jack, are we also engaged with you at the moment on that?
Not at the moment, but I'm sure that will be something that will be happening over the course of the coming weeks.
I'm sorry about that, and of course we will.
The draft conditions are part of the core documents, and so it's just a case of making sure that we're kept up to date with any changes to that, and also if we can get as close as possible to an agreed position next week, that will allow my agenda to be as accurate as possible in terms of the issues that we need to discuss. Now, just there are a few other matters that I wanted to talk about in the event that we have a virtual inquiry. There's also, regardless of whether we are having a virtual inquiry or having it in Glasgow, remembering that this is a public inquiry is also obviously extremely important. And we have issued an advert for the inquiry to inform people that the venue would be in Glasgow and that it would also be available to view on our website. On that basis, we have indicated that parties not involved in the inquiry would not be expected to be attending unless they had made their presence known in advance. And I think that's quite important in terms of the safety issues around this inquiry. To date, we've had no one who's expressed any interest in any event in attending the inquiry. If we were to be doing the inquiry virtually, there are arrangements that we may be able to make to stream it live. If that wasn't possible, it would be a recording that people would be able to view. In any event, though, anyone that wished to attend could attend in one of the breakout rooms where they would be able to view it live, and that would apply to your inquiry teams as well, so that they would be able to see it live and be able to pass any notes electronically to yourselves if that scenario was to proceed. So there's a few issues there around making sure that we communicate that to the public in either event, and we were intending to write out to parties just to remind them that they can view the inquiry online, and also if we were to hold it virtually, to intimate that they would wish to have access to view it live as a live stream, because we are very conscious about the sensitivities around making sure that we remain transparent, fair, and it remains very much a public inquiry. Are there any issues on those matters that anyone wishes to raise?
Yeah, ma'am, the live stream of the Murray inquiry worked very well. I think was much valued by people with an interest in the proceedings. Didn't mean to say they wanted to take part, but actually watching it live is quite different from watching a recording later, and that was appreciated. So I hope we'd be able to do that.
Yes, certainly. If we hold Glasgow, we should be able to live stream. We're currently doing work to look at whether we could live stream a virtual process, and we would be able to live stream to those that were attending in one of the breakout rooms, virtual breakout rooms. These are processes that we have in hand to make sure that the inquiries remain public. There's, in terms of the document management, and I think this applies either, it becomes more important if we're going to be doing this virtually, but also would be helpful if we were to do the physical inquiry. At the moment, we have only the core documents. There's no other parties document list. I just wanted to confirm that would be the case. Everything would be encapsulated within a core documents list. Is that the case?
From our perspective, yes, but that does give rise to an issue with virtual inquiries, which is that the ability to, I think things are always added during an inquiry. We always promise it won't happen, it always happens. And the ability to get that document on the system very quickly and available to all witnesses, I think will be quite a challenge if we are reliant simply, ma'am, on what you can do or what your case officer can do. One of the reasons that the virtual inquiry in Murray ran very smoothly is that we had a full-time programme officer who was sitting there in the inquiry room, spending most of her time managing documents and bringing them up on screen when required for the purposes of examination. So that is a challenge, and no doubt conversations you've had with the reporters in Murray will confirm that. But had they not had the programme officer there, it might have been quite a challenge to manage those documents live.
Thank you. Yes, I think that is one of the main challenges, is the document management, particularly if we're doing it virtually. One of the advantages here, we've had quite a long lead-in time to the documentation being submitted, and I'm hoping it is fairly comprehensive. I wondered if it would be, just having had sight of the core document list from Blarghour, if it was possible for the applicants to furnish a hyperlinked version of the core documents list, which I think would assist people in quickly finding those documents and enable a smooth process. That was just a suggestion. I'm not sure if that is something that you would be able to facilitate.
I don't know the answer to that, but I will find out and get back to you.
Thank you very much. And again, just making sure that we're all working off the same memory stick, if you like, so that we're all working off the same list and linkages to documents. Again, I think the programme officer at Blarghour was very helpful in that respect, but we won't have the benefit of the same assistance, but just having that, I think, would help to.
Sorry to come back in. I see your point, but you get into the issues of electronic page numbering and physical page numbering, and there are a number of issues that arise here. If you're in the inquiry room having a physical inquiry, I for one will have a pile of paper documents in front of me. It's really quite easy to manage, and with a program officer, it can be managed on screen. But without the facility of a program officer, I wouldn't underestimate the challenges of a virtual inquiry in terms of document management. Could I ask one question? Because a WhatsApp's come through to me as we speak, is precisely what you meant by the hyperlink.
Well, I can forward you the core document list that I had seen for Blarghour. It's basically got each of the core documents with basically a click on it that will take you into our DPA website document. It just enables parties to quickly access those.
Okay, we'll ask.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, in terms of the document management arrangements for the inquiry, is there anything else that anybody wants to bring to my attention? Ms. Jack, please.
It's been brought to my attention this morning that there's one document missing, we think, from the core documents from the Nature Scott team, which is a guidance document that's referred to within our witnesses' report. It's only been brought to my attention this morning, so I need to check what the position is in relation to that. But if it is indeed a document that's missing, that would be one additional document that we would seek to provide in short compass to the other parties and to yourself, if that's in order.
Yes, certainly. If there's anything missing, I think the more complete we can get the core document list, the less time we'll have to spend at the inquiry sorting out those kind of arrangements. We can check that. If you can send into the office the details of the document you think are missing, then we can check that out with the applicant. Mr. Carroll.
Just to confirm, Ma'am, that as you stated, that given the amount of time we've had effectively in preparing the documents for this inquiry, everything that the council will be relying upon is already included within the core document list. In other words, there's no separate council list of documents. Is that right, Mrs. Knox? I think that's correct.
Sorry. Yes, that's correct.
The other thing, though, was that the applicants have very kindly circulated memory sticks with all of the core documents on them. And if there were to be hyperlinks now attached to all of the core documents, then I suppose that the process would have to be undergone again in order then to have the index at the front of the core documents that are contained within the memory stick to also include the hyperlinks. I think that might be the case, in which case that would have been too pity that there'd be effectively a duplicated effort there.
Yes, no, I do appreciate that, and clearly we would be relying on the goodwill of the applicant to furnish us with that. But just having spoken to the reporter that was leading the Blarghour inquiry, it seemed to be very helpful to have everyone working from the most up-to-date list and the same memory stick. So if we could think about whether or not that could be facilitated, that would be extremely helpful, I think, to the inquiry process. So again, I know that would rely on the goodwill of the applicant, so I would leave that with them. Otherwise, we can look at some sort of protocol whereby we seek to manage the electronic documents through our case file list and the memory sticks that the applicant has already furnished us with.
That shouldn't be a problem. I mean, Wright Johnson Mackenzie, Fraser Gillis went through the same inquiry in Murray, so that they're very used to it already. So this can be done, I'm sure.
Yes. Okay, that's very helpful. And certainly having an up-to-date memory stick and an up-to-date list of court documents, hyperlinked if possible, would be, I think, the ideal scenario to at least mitigate some of the issues that we might face. Okay, anything else at all on those arrangements? Okay, that's fine, thank you. So I will produce a short note of this meeting and contain within it a decision on how we should be proceeding. I will need to consult with my management on this whole virtual versus physical inquiry issue. We've had a good discussion of it today, and I think you all understand where we're all coming from. So it's a case now of thinking about that risk versus benefits equation and coming to a firm view on how we can proceed. And that would then clearly involve the agreement of parties as to whether on that basis they would wish to proceed to the virtual inquiry as planned on the 12th of October, or to delay to some unknown date, I guess, when things might resolve. So some difficult questions there, I think, for us to address fairly quickly, given that we're now not very far away from the date of the inquiry. Could I just invite parties then to make any concluding remarks before we wrap up today, please? If we could start with the council, anything at all that you wish to point out before we close today?
Thank you, Ma'am, for that opportunity. No, as you said, we've covered everything, and my views have been made clear as to the council's preference in terms of evidence. One final matter then, since you've given me the opportunity, is that I am wary about there being a postponement, because obviously we had considered way back in February, or actually sometime after February, in about March, that if we then postponed until the 12th of October, well then surely matters will be back on track and we'll be able to have an in-person inquiry. And here we are discussing that with that very thing in peril. So I would be actually quite cautious about agreeing to any further postponement, in the hope at some unstated future date of having an in-person inquiry. It seems to me that if the word out was that it wasn't possible to have any part of the inquiry held in person on the 12th of October onwards, then I think in order to have matters progress, that the second, much less second best alternative of a virtual hearing should be the one that should go forward. That's all I wish to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So just to clarify, you would be, rather than postponement, you would rather have a virtual inquiry?
That would be my preference, yes.
Okay, thank you. And Nature Scott, your any concluding remarks?
No, I don't think there's anything additional that we require to raise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And from the applicant, please.
No, thank you, ma'am, for the opportunity to express our views. It's been very valuable to do so. We're not going to irritate you by writing to you, try and persuade you after this meeting. We've had our chance, but I'd just leave you with a plea not to leap to a virtual inquiry in legal circumstances which say we can still hold a physical inquiry, simply to manage risk. Our belief, and I think it's a responsible position to take, we took it only last week and the 2 weeks before that, is that the risk can be managed, and we can have a physical inquiry, and thus, unless there's an absolutely compelling reason not to do so, we should proceed on the 12th of October in the Hilton and Cambridge Street.
Just one final point, just so that I'm clear in my own mind. You don't consider there's any legal reason not to have a virtual inquiry as opposed to a virtual inquiry, do you?
No, I don't, until the First Minister says otherwise and rows back on the phase 3 stage we're at already. I don't see any legal need to reverse that position. We can hold a physical inquiry. It's just a matter of the DPEA's approach and risk management, and that's what I'm appealing to.
Okay, sorry, just to clarify that just a little bit more, was you didn't see any legal reason to have a virtual inquiry, not to have a virtual inquiry?
I see your point. I don't see any legal reason why we can't have a physical inquiry.
I'll take that to also mean there's no legal reason why we can't have a virtual inquiry. Okay.
That is also true.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, on that basis, I would thank you all very much for your time today, and I do hope that we will meet on the 12th of October, one way or another, because I think it's in everyone's interest that we don't hold up business. You know, we are trying to progress things as much as possible, and it's important that we make planning decisions and keep the wheels in motion. So certainly hope that we all meet on the 12th of October one way or another, and I will be circulating a note of this meeting just to clarify the things that we've been talking about today. So without further ado, I'd just like to thank you all very much and say goodbye, and if you don't have to travel home. So okay, thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you, Ma'am.
Bye.